Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to answer the question, are dungeon masters born or do they choose to be dungeon masters? So I just finished a brilliant series that, in my opinion, is every dungeon master content. So if you're a dungeon master today, there's a 60% chance you're male, right? There has never been a point in the history of the game, according to all data that's been collected, where there were more female dungeon masters than males. There just aren't, right? The last count, I think, was in 2019, and it came official right from WotC, and they were like 50% of the participants in Dungeons and Dragons are male and 40% are female. I am projecting that out to Dungeon Master. I think that's correct. The numbers are probably higher, right? But if you're a Dungeon Master, and so that means 9 chances out of that means the majority chance you need to understand women better, right? And because you're not one, and there's a difference, and males just don't understand women as well as they understand males generally, because there's kind of a bridge in their experience to ours, right? So there's a television show. It's called Hacks. I just finished season 2. Nothing will teach you more about female empowerment and intelligent females and success in females than this show. It's absolutely brilliant, right? And it's a fun ride. It's really fantastic. In this show, there is a woman named Deborah Vance. Okay, that's her fictional name, and she is a massively successful $100 million plus female stand-up comedian. Pretty much like Joan Rivers, right? Maybe Amy Schumer, right? That's the closest analogy you would see today, right? The most successful female comic on the planet. She gets to a point where she's at a residency in Las Vegas, and she's just kind of being lazy and just telling the same old stupid jokes. And she gets kicked out of her residency because she's lazy, right? And she hires a hip, young, woke female writer to punch up her jokes, right? And the whole show is about Deborah Vance and Deborah Vance's assistant, this young woke bisexual. The woman who punches up her jokes is bisexual. She likes to be with women and she likes to be with men, right? So there's a point in the show where Deborah's assistant asks her, why are you straight? Have you ever thought about just, I think you might be sad because you're actually a lesbian and you're not paying attention to that, right? And so Deborah says, well, it's the way I was born. I'm attracted to men because it's the way I was born, right? And then she says to the assistant, am I right about that? Right? I was born this way, right? Because I think, on the LGBTQ side, the main thrust, the most people who have the most respect in that community, they believe they were born this way. They don't believe that there was choice. There are some people, and she acknowledges that there are some LGBTQ who believe that you're not born with it, you choose it, right? And actually her assistant says, yes, that's right. We were born this way, right? And this becomes really interesting but then she also extends it and she says, but you could choose, right? And you're like, that seems like a really odd thing to say. And it's really fascinating. When they get into this discussion, you could see that the bisexual assistant really very clearly is a little troubled with this discussion. And the reason why is, I think there's a problem on the LGBTQ side that they're still kind of wrestling over. And the idea is, one, it's very easy and there's a huge amount of benefits to say, I was born this way, right? But the problem is you're no longer special, right? If you're gay, or if you're lesbian, or if you're trans, or if you're if you're asexual, if you're intersex. Before it was something, if it was something you chose, right? It's something you could champion, right? But if you're just born that way, why even celebrate it? Frankly, we've had a ton of problems with people saying, this is an aspect I was born with. You're not born with it. I'm born with it. Let's celebrate it. And people are like, wait, we're going to celebrate something that you got just because you were born that way? And so, we have this Pride Month, but pride for what? Right? You didn't choose this. It's just what you were born with, right? And it really brought up an incredibly fascinating discussion, and I think that discussion is happening right now in the LGBT community, right? And so let's have the same discussion for Dungeon Masters. All right, so first of all, I think people are... So what do you need to be a Dungeon Master? I'm going to give it to you. You've heard it from me before, but I'll say it one more time real quick. Charisma, confidence, intelligence. You cannot Dungeon Master without these things. It's a fact, right? And it's the same, and as long as we're talking about comedians, there are no stupid stand-up comedians. They don't exist. And the reason why is they'll get heckled off stage, right? If the odds are that somebody sitting in your bog standard comedy group is more intelligent than you, you're going to get wrecked, right? But the reality is that's not the case. All stand-up comedians are very intelligent, and if they're not, they don't make it far, right? They do one or two gigs and they're gone, right? Because some heckler just outclasses them, from the cheap seats, right? It's the same thing here. You cannot Dungeon Master without charisma, confidence, and intelligence, right? And so there are people who are born with this, right? And so here's the answer. I think Dungeon Masters are born, right? The question is if they ever realize what they are. So if you are born with charisma, confidence, and intelligence, right? You are born to be a Dungeon Master. You are a born Dungeon Master. You're born into it. The question is if it will ever manifest, right? And the reality is I think you can reject what you were born to, right? So actually, I agree with the bisexual assistant. She is attracted to women and attracted to men, but she can choose to only be with men, or she can choose to only be with women. She has that ability. It's the same. Dungeons and Dragons, I agree with her. So you're born to be a Dungeon Master, but you can choose to reject your born heritage. That's what I think. I think Dungeon Masters are born. And if you are not born to be a Dungeon Master, if you are not graced with charisma, intelligence, and confidence at birth, you can choose to be a Dungeon Master and you will fail and you will fall off like a vestigial nub. That's my opinion. What do you think? Do you think Dungeon Masters are born, or do you think that we choose to be Dungeon Masters? I think they're born and then they manifest their birthright. Okay? And I do have incredible sympathy for people who want to choose to do it, but then can't and fail, and then just kind of sidle off and have short-lived careers of an attempt to be a Dungeon Master that never manifests because they didn't have the born qualities for it. That's what I think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.